Good morning. We'd like to welcome everyone.
Good morning. This is Bob Strickland. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Bob. Can you hear us? Right there. Good morning. Can everyone online hear us? Yes. Okay. Maybe it's just Bob. All right. Well, then we will proceed. I'd like to welcome everyone to the April 25th, 2024 Landmarks meeting. It's great to see so many people in person. In compliance with notification requirements of Ohio's open meeting law and section 101.021 of the codified ordinance of Cleveland, Ohio, 1976, notice of this meeting has been publicly posted. All boards and commissions under the purview of City Planning Department conducts its meetings according to Robert's Rule of Order. Actions during the meeting will be taken by roll call vote. Recusal from any case due to a conflict of interest should be stated for the record prior to the beginning of the presentation. In order to ensure that everyone participating in the meeting has the opportunity to be heard, virtual attendants will use the raised hand feature before asking a question or making a comment. The raised hand feature can be found in the participants panel on the desktop and mobile versions and activated by clicking the hand icon. Please wait for the chair or the facilitator to recognize you, and be sure to use and select the unmute button and announce yourself before you speak. When finished speaking, please lower your hand by clicking the raised hand icon again and muting your microphone. Call-in users can unmute by using *6. All meeting activities are being recorded via the WebEx platform. These proceedings are also being live streamed via YouTube. All requests to speak on a particular matter submitted through the proper channels have been considered. The proper channels for comments are sending an email to landmarks@clevelandohio.gov, email address with a comment or letter, calling and or leaving a message at 216-664-2532, or sending a letter or dropping off comments at City Hall located at 601 Lakeside Avenue, Suite 519. Communication with members of this body must follow proper channels for consideration. Any comments received by the stated deadline are collected by the Landmark staff and disseminated to the commission members prior to the scheduled meeting.
Regarding the meeting rules and procedures, the chair will call each agenda item, and then each applicant will be invited to proceed through their presentation. Each presentation should be completed prior to questions and comments from the commission in order to facilitate a smooth presentation. Once the presentation is concluded, the chair will ask Landmark staff to summarize design review committee recommendations and any public comment received. The deadline for public comment is noon on the Tuesday prior to any regularly scheduled Cleveland Landmarks Commission meeting. Any received comments are distributed to commission members prior to the meeting. Staff will also identify any members of the public present and scheduled to speak. Public comment is allowed at the discretion of the chair, and any individual providing public comment is permitted 2 minutes to speak to the agenda item in which they have an interest. The chair will then request a recommendation from staff. The commission will then begin deliberations and project review. Any commission member except the chair may make a motion at any point after an agenda item has been called.
All right. We will call the April 25th, 2024 Landmarks Commission meeting to order. Mr. Musson, please call roll.
Ms. Anderson?
Here.
Mr. Dreyer? Mr. Dulick?
Here.
Councilmember Gray? Director Wong? Mr. Lozier? Mr. Sandberry?
Here.
Mr. Strickland? Let's see him. Mr. Trasick?
Here.
Dr. Williams? And Ms. Trout?
Here. Oh, Dr. Williams.
She just, all right. Dr. Williams, we just called you for roll. Are you?
I'm here.
All right.
Thank you.
Good timing. Madam Chair, we have quorum. I'd also like to note that in addition, to the commission, we have Patricia McGinty Aston and Kevin Roberts present from the law department, and then Carl Brunges, Jessica Beam, and myself from Landmark staff.
Excellent. We'll begin with our certificates of appropriateness. We'd like to call our first applicant forward. Please state your name for our record and tell us about your project. Sure. You're welcome to present wherever you feel most comfortable.
Hello. My name is Ellis Katz. I'm with Project Management Consultants, and we're the owner's representative on the Convention Center expansion, which is the site where this monument is going to be located. So it falls within the Landmarks District, so that's why we're here. With me to present is Nicholas Slaughterback with Moody Nolan. He will make the primary presentation. Available for questions are Gary Kaplan and Joe Gazzo with the Siegel and Schuster Society, and David Deming, the artist and sculptor.
Excellent. Welcome, everyone. Yes.
Oh, excellent. Welcome. Good morning, everybody. For those who've been present before for a few of these, we're very excited to present the Siegel and Schuster Tribute Plaza. The plaza is at the corner of Ontario and St. Clair for the Cleveland Convention Center expansion. The first couple points here, we are showing the letter of intent, how we are planning on going through the construction and the more contractual obligations between the Siegel and Schuster Society and the Convention Center. We do have for these statues of Superman approval from DC Comics, signed by their senior legal representative. And as for maintenance, this project is placing 3 statues at this plaza, and we do have maintenance plans in place for how these will be upkept and maintained.
I'll just add the
Yes.
Siegel and Schuster Society, just to be for clarity, is creating an escrow account that will fund on an annual basis or an as-needed basis any kind of maintenance on these statues on an in perpetuity basis. They're also going to have an insurance policy in place for any damage caused by vandalism or acts of God or things like that to the statues.
As everybody's probably aware, this is located in Cleveland, Ohio. And we're actually in between the Cuyahoga County Courthouse and Public Square, located at the corner of Ontario and St. Clair Avenue, right at the Cleveland Convention Center site. You can see some aerial footage here of where that site is. We are looking at that small green postage stamp you're seeing right at that corner. Right now, the convention center is under construction as it is in this photo. A little further along now. We're looking for opening in, what was it, June, Ellis?
Will be complete at the end of June.
Here you can see some site context photos from Ontario looking down from Public Square to the courthouse. We're trying to keep this view in mind when placing statues. Some existing site context. This was a few years ago. Currently, the site does not look like this. It is under construction. As you can see, there was some greenery there before, adding a little bit of that green space to the downtown area. When this first came before the commissions and committees, we had presented following site plan where it was a diagonal swath of concrete that cut through this site with 2 landscape areas on either side. When we were first going through this, there was a big point about trying to maintain green space. We're trying to keep in mind, stormwater runoff, so permeable surfaces were, ideas that we wanted to keep. We were looking at, this being an activated patio space with some patio, bistro tables and chairs, some soft, wood bench seating, and various plantings, as well as adding some trees and foliage to keep verticality and height for green. When we were approached to kind of reinvent this plaza for the Siegel and Schuster Societies, the statues for Superman and Siegel and Schuster, we thought of how we could incorporate these and tell a story. What we decided to do was to narrow that concrete path and cut a transverse path in the opposite direction of permeable pavers to keep that permeability. The design of that opposite path is actually reminiscent of the Superman shield, the S shield that he wears. If you would kind of like envision it, it is the shield cut in half flipped and mirrored and pulled, with one side being a little bit larger and smaller and connected. So we, as a viewer, you're able to get that connectivity to the character, just through that representation. We've also added some areas of green space. This is just grass planting, for people to move outside of the plaza, a little bit more freer space around the area. Again, this is about a 50 by 50 plaza, not very, very large. We are still looking at adding some wood benches, this time backless, to allow for somebody to view from either side if they'd like to get a better view of Jerry, Joanne, and Joe, or if they would like a view of Superman. And then various plantings around as well. The lower benches that ran along the public right-of-way are being replaced by similar wood benches, backless, as well. And planting is brought around those.
So this plan reflects previous comments from the Design Review Committee and the Plan Commission. This is trying to incorporate some of those comments that were conditional on their approvals into this plan, so start to update it to what we were trying to be reflected by those conditions.
We also will have an informational sign around 24 by 36 located at the corner of those stairs there at the diagonal, right along St. Clair Avenue. That informational sign will give information on the statues, the story, the history of Superman, as well as some connectivity to the Glenville neighborhood where Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster created the iconic character. As for the benches, we are looking at something backless. Again, trying to maintain the idea of those of Superman with that diagonal pitch to the legs of the bench. Pervious pavers will have a field of light and dark gray. And then for the planting itself, we're looking at threadleaf, blue star, bridal vestibule, and tater tot arborvitae. What we're looking at here is something to envision, something soft to envision a cloudiness, that Superman is flying through the clouds. We're also keeping in mind that these plants will change from fall, winter, spring, and summer. For the, you can see here the site lighting, we're trying to keep in mind level of futurism, metropolis. Superman's home is the city of tomorrow. And Superman's other moniker is the man of tomorrow. So we try to keep something a little bit more futuristic, as a little bit of that UFO look as well, to kind of correlate to his alienness. As well, here you see what we're kind of looking at for that display signage. If you've been to Cleveland Hopkins Airport and got your baggage, I'm sure you've seen Superman there to greet you as you get off your plane. Similar signage will be applied to our graphic sign. Getting more into the detailed drawings, you can see our architectural site plan, as well as a detail as for lighting. For lighting, we are looking at in-ground directional lighting to illuminate the statues at night, as well as there'll be 4 light posts around each corner of the site. There'll be an even height depending on, so if they're on the lower portion of the site, it'll be a 14-foot post, on the upper portion 12-foot, so an even light throughout. We can provide photometrics if needed to show that we are providing adequate lighting. But as you can see here, the biggest image on this is actually in the upper right-hand corner, where you can see these statues laid out, how we want to tell the story. What we're going to have is a phone booth on site, non-operational, graffiti resistant, made of stainless steel. It'll have a dome light in it, and inside the phone booth will be the clothing of a mild-mannered reporter, Clark Kent. Just planned north of that will be the statue of Joanne, Joe, and Jerry. They will be looking in awe up to the sky. It seems that they can believe a man can fly. As you look over a little bit further, you will see an 18-foot high statue of Superman flying to save the day. The story we're trying to tell is that Superman has heard trouble somewhere in the world with the super hearing, and he is off to save the day, no matter where that would be. And here you can get a better view of that Superman statue. It will be on a blue plinth. The original color that David was going to use for that plinth was this lighter blue here, and he's since kind of moved over to something a little bit darker. As you'll see in the night shots, when you start lighting that up at night, this kind of washes out a little bit. The statue of Superman will be in stainless steel, an homage to his moniker, the Man of Steel. As you can see here, a little bit more detail. He'll be 9 foot, a little over, from tip of fist to tip of toe. His directionality will be faced toward the new ballroom expansion as well. So if you're in the ballroom, you will have a front view of Superman. Some nice photo opportunities from inside and outside the plaza. We are looking, of course, as to how this base will be constructed. The plaza itself will be installed very shortly within the next couple months. The statues later on, about 6 to 12 months out. So we did want to keep in mind that we don't want to leave just pavers empty. So it'll be paved plaza with these permeable. We'll remove them. Foundations will be poured now, and then when the statues are ready, they'll be placed in place and pavers were placed. Jerry Siegel, Joanne Siegel, and Joe Schuster will be this darker bronze color. They'll stand around a little under 8 foot high from the base of the base to the top of his head. This base will actually be a polished granite, which will match the polished black granite on the Cleveland Ballroom expansion. And of course, the statues will be a dark bronze. The phone booth itself, you can see some images here showing that this is the wood mock-up that David has made. It will be stainless steel in the end. It will have graffiti resistant glazing and impact resistant, I believe, as well. So we are keeping in mind, cognizant that this is not, it's going to be locked, non-accessible. There will be a way for maintenance to access it, but only maintenance. And it'll be vented and lit as well. And you can see here what those clothes would look like inside. As we move on to the renderings, this is a view from across the street, Cata Corner, looking down on the plaza. And as we get a little bit closer in here, you can kind of see more visually what that story is trying to tell. So you can kind of see here the pointing up and observing, Superman flying off to save the day. Get a better idea too of how you can see from in that ballroom out what you'll kind of see of Superman. You won't be looking at his toes. And again, this is an older rendering. The benches will be backless now, and behind the gentleman sitting there on the bench will be grassy areas. We tried to stay away from grassy areas now behind the statues, figuring that most people probably aren't going to want to get too many views of behind. That being said, we did keep enough space around each statue for accessible movement as well. Some of the best views, however, are going to actually be off of the plaza on that right off the public right away. Again, these benches will match the benches up on the plaza now, be wood backless benches, so that if somebody wanted to look up at Superman rather than look out toward Ontario, they could, or St. Clair respectively. And we are trying to keep in mind, one comment was to place markers for photos. We'd like to install first before doing that, just to get an idea of how this actually looks, actually experience it in play. And here finally you see a night view. This is an artistic representation of the night shot. This is not fully accurate to what it will look like. There will be more adequate lighting, street lighting behind, and of course probably some lights on in the building as well. But we really wanted to show you kind of what we were hoping would become almost a focal image of, you're watching Sunday night sports, maybe the Browns are playing, or maybe you're watching the Cavs game and they do those shots around the city. And we hope this would be one of those shots you'd start seeing. Make sure everybody knows that Superman was made in Cleveland. Jerry, as I'm sure many people know, Jerry and Joe were from the Glenville neighborhood, two young men who created what might honestly be one of the biggest pop culture icons in our nation's history, if not the world. They created the superhero. If not for Superman, we would not have the cultural landscape that we have today. Marvel, DC, and the litany of other characters of homages and pastiches of each wouldn't exist. And we want to honor that. They're Cleveland born and raised. They were Cleveland raised. This character is a part of Cleveland's history, and we're really excited to honor it. So that is all I have. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you for the presentation. Before we get to questions and comments, we'll review the Design Review Advisory Committee recommendations.
Yep. To the chair and members of the commission, Dan Schinkel, the administrator for Downtown Plants. Just going over some of the commentary from the committee. Just to catch you up, so they came through Downtown Plants last week on the 18th. It was approved with conditions. The applicant has actually since revised some of their plans to meet some of these conditions. Let's go over them quickly here. Revising the concrete area around the benches. And they wanted that just for an admin approval back to us. I see that's already been integrated into these plans. The grass triangle areas be enhanced so that people aren't trampling the landscaping. They've already done that as well. And then including maps and addresses of other relevant Superman sites around the city, specifically the Glenville Childhood Homes and Glenville High School. I think even the Ohio Bell Building as well. The applicant, even last Friday, was talking about how that map is built now. Considering back-to-back benches, I think they're talking about backless now. And then overall, they just wanted to commend the design of the monument. Very excited for Cleveland to get something like this.
Awesome, thank you. We'll then move on to Cleveland, the Landmarks Commission comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this project was actually reviewed by the City Planning Commission as they review artwork as well as us. And that was reviewed on April 19th. So that was last week. They had a lot of the same comments as the Downtown Flats Committee. And they moved to approve the project with conditions to, as noted, revise the concrete and enhance the grass area, which the applicants have done, to provide location for prominence for the plaque and signage, and to work with the final finishes, with staff for the final finishes, in consideration for the back-to-back benches, and as noted, that photo opportunity of where to identify a good photo spot on the sidewalk. And then we have Tara Petras, our public art coordinator, here as well.
Thank you. Good morning. Jessica and Dan Schinkel covered much of what I was going to say, but I just want to commend all the thoughtfulness that went into this project. We had a lot of meetings. These meetings, even though Superman in Cleveland has been in the works for years, we had a lot of meetings with other departments. The team came in on March 22nd and met with myself, Dan Schinkel, Dan Husson, Building and Housing, to address questions and concerns and review what needed to be done for next steps in the process. The team did make some tweaks based on that feedback before they also presented to the Cuyahoga County Monuments Commission, which is newly formed, and their chair, Patrick Hewitt, is here as well. They had an overall positive response as well. After I'm finished, we want to make a couple of comments also. And we do have on record copies of the letter of intent between the Siegel and Schuster Society and the county. We also have a letter of permission from the Senior Vice President of Legal at DC Comics, Joe Coben, I'm sorry. Jay Coben. And we have a copy of the maintenance plan from Mr. Finney. And as Jessica and Dan said, they did make a lot of tweaks, so you guys got an updated version based on feedback from all the different committees. And then they did address the board, as they stated. We also received a letter of support from Downtown Cleveland's Executive Vice President Michael Deemer and an email of support from Councilman Kerry McCormick. And again, like I said, this has been years in making. It adds more prominent homage to the history of Superman being created in Cleveland and has the potential to be an iconic destination, as well as the Siegel Home and public artwork in Glenville neighborhood. There's been a lot of references to the homes, but there's also a smaller scale public art installation on the fence of one of the homes of Siegel and Schuster in Glenville, as well as, like they said, at the airport. And I just imagine this being a public art destination, not just like with the sports aerial views when we're on national TV, but also thinking about things like Comic-Con coming to the convention center and how these DC Comics enthusiasts will want to engage with this particular piece of art, enjoy taking photos and selfies. I did have two questions and I'll be done. One was if the pillar is also going to be graffiti resistant. And the other one, some of the earlier slides, there was some slight protrusions shown on the pillar that I didn't see in rendering, so I was just wondering what those were. But I'm enthusiastically, obviously, supporting this.
I think David might want to.
Yeah. They're rectangular.
We're not allowed to.
Oh, you can, if you don't mind. We're just going to, before you do that, if you don't mind holding that for just 2 more minutes, because it is a question I think we'll ask, but we just want to hear landmark staff recommendations, and then we can get back to your feedback. So
Thank you, Madam Chair. Former comic book collecting self was very happy to see this and running through my Superman comic collection that I have from the reprints of Action Comic 1 and the whole Death of Superman arc and all that stuff. So it's like running through part of my childhood there. So that was fun to do, talk about with my colleagues on that stuff. This proposal has no impact on historic resources. So therefore it is appropriate. And although losing some of the trees that were planned for this is a little disappointing, it's understandable. Just something that not quite with making the sign, and maybe somebody can finally put an end to this debate. Is the Ohio Bell Building truly the inspiration for the Daily Planet? Because there are plenty of other things, and I think that's something, the myths of Cleveland that we keep finding out or trying to prove or debunk. Can you please have a final answer on that? Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent. Now we'll open up the floor for questions and comments. If you'd like to start off and answer that one question, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, the question on the pillar base is that just like cartoonists will create dashes of color to help movement, those rectangular pieces that are cutting through and wrapping around help activate it. They also, it's very hard to see in these small photos, but the edges of them are red and yellow. So I wanted to have the three colors of Superman represented in that base. So the base blue, red, and yellow. And so that's what those are, just to activate them.
You mentioned the pink,
Yeah, on the pink color, the first color, the lighter color was the color that we had that's in those photographs. And in the site, it looks lighter, but that's because of how the computer registers the color. But the question was, would a slightly darker color be better for the area? And I agree, at that comment. So I came up with this slightly darker blue. It's deceiving in this room because this room has such low light in it. But if you took that outside, that darker blue still will pop a little bit, but not too much. Yeah.
I was more curious about graffiti.
Yeah.
Because-
Yeah, the paint is, I had used Sherwin-Williams paint on a big sculpture in Austin, Texas about 5 years ago. And somebody, about a month after it was installed, took white paint and painted over it. And the next day, they cleaned it off. You could not tell. They didn't have to repaint it or anything. They just were able to walk it off. It's an extraordinary epoxy paint.
Excellent. Thank you for answering that question. We'll then open up the floor to the commission for questions and comments. I'm sorry?
Dr. Williams.
Oh, Dr. Williams, thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to commend the applicants on sharing a wonderful presentation today, certainly addressing concerns that had come up earlier. I heard the comment that there have been lots of meetings. This project has been in the works for a long time, but I'm especially pleased to see that there is a connection to the Glenville neighborhood. Very often I hear criticisms about downtown development and the neglect of the neighborhoods and especially of the schools. But I think it means a lot that there's information associated with this particular public art work that says that students can be heroes or create their own heroes. And I think these comic books, if I can believe what our colleague said earlier, inspire children to read. Literacy matters in Cleveland, not just to our public libraries and to the teachers in the public schools, but I think also to students. So thank you very much for addressing the historic aspects of the Superman story, and also the fact that these are just kids from Glenville who did an amazing thing, and they're long gone, but we're still talking about the great thing that they did and the difference that it's going to make in the future of downtown Cleveland. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Other questions and comments from the commission?
I have a
Mr. Chandler?
I guess going back to the movement nodes that are on the statue, I don't know that the answer or the question was answered. Are those part of the statue still, or are they?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Do those provide a foothold and handhold for someone to climb?
No, they're too high.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then my only other question is just kind of out of curiosity. Does this site hold any historic significance to the creators or to the Superman story? Or was it just
Not that I know.
The site, not really. We did find a subtle, not irony, but a bit of comedy that, you know, we're across the street from the Justice Building right now. And of course, as I was saying, from Public Square to the metaphorical Hall of Justice of the Cuyahoga County Courthouse, you know, we're in that line. So while not historical significance to Superman himself, some significance to the city.
Sure. Thank you.
I guess I'll make my comments. I reinforce what Mr. Samberry's question. You know, that would be my concern, just knowing people and how they like to climb everything. That the projections may not encourage, but not deter people from climbing it. You know, so I would just really encourage you to see how far they project out. I like the movements that it provides, but the projections do concern me a little bit. You know, knowing people will climb anything. And anything over an inch, somebody can climb if you know, really want to, because of rock climbing, things like that. So I would just really focus on those as you're developing your final design, and just think about that. Like, would some be better as a recess that was, or something cut out that could be painted to really not provide enough distance so people can't climb the base. My only other question or concern, because I should have stated, I really do like this, you know, entire composition. I think it's a wonderful location. I like the irony and I like the design, but my only question would be related to the materiality of having 5 different materials between these 3 different sculptures and not having that thread to allow people who may not be as familiar with the Superman story or may not, it's very understated, which I like. But at the same time, that thread that ties them all together to know that this is not 3 different sculptures. This is one, you know, story that is being told, because you have the aluminum, the bronze, the marble, or did you say?
So this is a polished black granite.
It's the granite, and then the blue base, and then the stainless sculpture. You know, just having something that could thread them all together so that you see it's a continuous story that's being told is just my personal preference. You know, even if the phone booth was painted blue or something to bring at least the 2 sides of the story to bookend it, I don't think that's the right solution, but something that, you know, could you know, tie the 3 elements together. That would just be my one piece of feedback. That's my personal preference. But overall, I think it is a wonderful installation proposal, and I'm in support of it.
Madam Chair.
Oh, yes, thank you. Yes.
Yes, I are you done? Just wanna.
Yes, go ahead, Councilman.
Okay, yeah, I just want to echo everyone, what was said by everyone. I think it's a fantastic history of a story to bring to downtown from what we grew up on with Superman as little kids. I also worked at the library for 10 years, and to see a Superman history on the 2nd floor every day was amazing, even as a grown folk, you know, that you go and look at all the stories from 1939 up to current. It's like it was in our face every day. So it's amazing just to know that how you enjoy something that many years up to being grown, and then always going to the movies. Every time they remake Superman, you there in the movies, enjoying it as well. But I just have one question to piggyback off of Madam Chair. The telephone booth, you will have it sealed.
Correct.
You don't want nobody going there.
I dare say,
Superman, you know what I'm saying? So you will have it sealed where they cannot go
Correct.
into the telephone booth and you look at somebody dressed up like Superman, downtown. Just having a laughter here. But however, I echo what everyone has said. It is really amazing and exciting to see this come to downtown and just the historical history on it. So I commend everyone that's been part of this. So thank you.
Thank you. We'll then go to people online. Michelle. Yes, we have two online that's had their hands
Sorry.
raised. So yes, Michelle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to say that I am in agreement with all of my fellow commissioners and their wonderful comments. And this is a very exciting project for the city. I have a couple of questions. One concerns the bronze statues of the three odd bystanders. I don't know if we can go back to the photo of that. There we go. I'm not sure how high up they are on that base, and maybe it's the angle of this photo, but the proportions, especially of the gentleman pointing, it seems like his legs are extremely short and his arms are kind of long. So I guess that kind of bugs me. I'm in agreement with a lot of the chairwoman's comments about tying the sculptures together a little more, just kind of referencing them together. Hopefully there'll be a plaque which sort of explains the story to people who, maybe aren't that familiar. I mean, I know we're all familiar with the story. It's very much a part of, American culture, but if you have visitors from somebody else, somewhere else, they may not be that familiar with it. I also wanted to know if any of the descriptive texts that you might have as far as informational materials or QR codes, if they make any mention of the artist who created this work. So those are my questions and my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Would someone like to address the questions?
Well, to respond, I'm Gary Cap, I'm president of the Siegel Truster Society, the nonprofit. And I'm also a relative of Jerry Siegel. So there's going to be a plaque. And the whole project is going to tell the story really of two 11th graders at Wendell Hudson created the very first superhero comic. And how it gave birth to the entire superhero genre we have today, which is bigger than ever. All started with these two 11th graders. And they tried to get it published when they were 11th grade. Publishers turned it down. They tried again in 12th grade. Publishers turned it down. Then they graduated. Next year, they turned it down. The next year, they turned it down. This went on for 6 years. But they never gave up hope. And Superman is a symbol for hope. Our nonprofit's been trying to work the statue for 15 years. And we've never given up hope. We appreciate you listening to our presentation today. But the plaque will have the information how these 11 graders from Glenville High School, how they created Superman, and how they wanted it, and where they lived on Jerry Siegel and Kimberly Avenue. By the way, our nonprofit renovated the Siegel home in 2009, and the Siegel home, which was demolished many years ago, that property, we put a perimeter fence around the property with panels from Action Comics number 1 to go around it. Our nonprofit did that. We are currently working with Glenville High School, put up a permanent display there,
showcase. It's going to have the history as well about when these students were there at Glenville High School, Jerry and Joe, and the yearbook, and the work they did at the high school newspaper. Jerry had his own column in the high school newspaper. Joe was an illustrator for their high school newspaper. So all that history will be there.
Excellent.
I believe you're gonna put names under each statue in the base that describe who these people are. They're not just bystanders, they are the creators.
Excellent. Okay, excellent, yes.
I respond to a number of the questions. First of all, the photo, I took that photo too close. You can see the proportions are different in this figure, and I've actually already modeled the life-size figures, and they're proportionally correct. On this base, one of the things that you might not feel from the presentation, but in the phone booth, the suit of Superman is this blue color. So there's a lot of color exchange. I also thought that the wording that would go on this base, there may be one of the panels might be all the major donors. But anything that's going to go on this base can be that same blue. It'll be sandblasted so there's depth and then painted that blue. The top of this base is stainless steel linking, and there's no aluminum involved. I heard aluminum. The phone booth is stainless steel.
Okay.
So this is stainless steel. There'll also be little sections of stainless steel showing on the corners here to support the slabs of steel, or the slabs of granite. So there are going to be visual links to those colors and materials through.
Excellent. It's great that you've thought through all of that, and we appreciate that. Ms. Anderson, did you conclude your questions?
Yes, Madam Chair, I did.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Strickland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to echo many of the comments of my fellow commissioners. I think this is a wonderful project. I think these little plazas are very important to the city, and the way this plaza is being developed, honoring Superman and Superman's creators and their connection to Cleveland, I think is going to be very significant. I would suggest that
Mr. Strickland, we lost you. Well, we'll get back to a suggestion if he jumps in.
and it's significant. Huh?
Bob, we lost you at your statement. I would make a suggestion. So could you repeat your suggestion again?
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Okay. Well, I was just saying, I was again commending the convention center and the creators of this wonderful artwork, and suggesting that it's going to really activate this corner. And because of its proximity to Public Square, I think it's going to draw many visitors, not only those that are participating in conventions at the convention center, but visitors to the city are going to be drawn to this. And so having the appropriate signage and QR codes to really explain the history of Superman and the creators of Superman and the connection to the city, I think is going to be very important. And you'll find that people really linger in this area, and it's going to be a very important addition to the city of Cleveland. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. Mr. Dulick.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. In addition to echoing my fellow commissioners' comments, I want to commend everybody involved for, I think, really can be characterized as an appropriately heroic effort that was done. But I think what really bears special commendation to is that you have proactively thought about this for the long term. I can't say how much me personally I think I can speak on behalf of the commissioners, my fellow commissioners, that we really appreciate that because it is a concern. And the fact that you've actually embedded that in your project have actually made that a piece of the whole engagement with your donors, especially commendable.
Awesome. Speeches.
Thank you. One last thing I asked, regarding the signage, and maybe as a condition of approval. In addition to crediting the artist and having a title on the signage, also if maybe somewhere on the sculpture base or something, that there's a year of installation that's included as part of that information. Oh, and the text for the signage, back to the signage, if they could have it sent to staff for final approval, administrative approval for the copy for the signage.
So we're just sidebarring. I don't think we can make that a condition, of the approval because we are materiality and not the content of the art, or the signage or. Is that correct, Mr. Russell, next day?
That would be my evaluation, yeah.
So I think they've obviously heard your request, but we can't make it a condition of ours in that. I think we've heard that loud and clear that the desire for, signage and really the recognition that all parties deserve related to that. Obviously, most importantly, that the foundation has seen really been persistent in getting this forward in the history. Yes.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that typically, I sign all my work, only conspicuously enough, so it doesn't get in the way. But normally on this section of the bronze base, I'll usually have my name / sculptor and date of the sculpture. So, and that could happen on all three units. Yeah.
Excellent. Yes.
Hewitt, as Sarah mentioned with the Cuyahoga County Monument Commission, just wanted to mention this is on county-owned land, which is one of the reasons why it's also for our commission. I wanted to commend both the city of Cleveland. This process has been very helpful as we're going through our approval process, and this team who has been very thorough in responding to many of our requests. Similarly about, for instance, maintenance and ongoing insurance. They came before us at the end of March and will come next week on May 3rd. Final approval. Very positive part of the mission as well, which looks at monuments there on. So,
Thank you. Thank you for that update. All right, hearing fairly consistent feedback across the entire commission. Would someone like to make a motion? Dr. Williams?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would move that we accept the applicant's presentation as presented to us today with the conditions, and this may require some correction, but with the conditions that particular attention be paid to signage, that an effort be made to link all of the various components of the sculpture, stainless steel and other materials, that the signage be large enough not to detract from the artwork, but also to provide essential information that connects all of the various pieces, and that there be plaques available at the various components to identify them as being parts of a larger whole.
So may I make the suggestion that those are recommendations and the condition be that they return or submit to staff the final signage locations and designs?
Absolutely. Thank you very much for the clarification of my
Excellent.
motion.
So we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Sandberry. We have a second. Any further discussion?
Yes, this is Michelle Anderson. Yes. Regarding those notches on the that vertical on the base that where the Superman statue is being held, I know there was some mention of altering those so they're not attractive to people who might want to rappel or climb that base.
Good point. Dr. Williams, would you like to make that a condition to evaluate the projections to confirm that they're not climbable?
Yes, I agree that that would be appropriate.
Mr. Sandberg?
Yes.
All right.
I would also like to add that we work with staff for key locations for photography.
Dr. Williams, do you agree with that recommendation?
Yes.
Okay. So we have a few additional items. Any further comments? All right, Mr. Musson, please call roll.
All right, Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Dulick,
Yes.
Councilmember Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Sandberg,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Trosick,
Yes.
Dr. Williams,
Yes.
and Ms. Trout.
Yes.
Madam Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
Excellent. Congratulations. Good luck with the installation. We really look forward to seeing this, installed. I'm sorry, when did you say this was going to be installed?
We're putting in the foundations as a part of the expansion. That now that we have approvals, Mr. Gazzo here is gonna go full strength at getting the final funding for creating of the statues, but we hope in April of 2025.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, it's very exciting. So thank you for all of your hard work and your
Thank you.
persistence.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
We'll now move on to our second applicant, located at 7820 Euclid Avenue, New Life at Calvary Church, roof tornado damage repair. We're gonna just wait one moment for everybody to exit the room.
Yes, you see.
All right. We'd like to welcome the applicants for the roof tornado damage repair. Please announce yourself and tell us about your project.
Good morning. Is my audio working?
Yes, it is.
Great, thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair and commission members. I'm Brian Grambort with ED Francisco and Siebold, the architect of record for the repair. I am joined remotely by Pastor Kelly, representing New Life at Calvary Church. Before I get into the presentation, Pastor Kelly, anything you want to say, or should I jump into the presentation? All right, if not, I will go right in. So if we could go to the next slide. As mentioned, this is a presentation on the repair to the church. As context, the church is located at the southwest corner of East 79th Street and Euclid Avenue, shown here on the site location map. Next slide.
One moment, technical error.
There we go. There we go. So somewhat of a bird's eye view of the site. The historic portion of the 144-year-old church is at the top. There's a second section of the building called the parlor identified here. What we're really focusing on is the fellowship hall, or in this case, it's called the school, which is highlighted in yellow at the bottom of the structure. That portion of the church really sustained the most damage. There was some considerable damage to the existing gym, which is just to the left, but that received some emergency roof repairs. So for this presentation, we're focusing on the school. Next slide. I'll go through a bit of additional context. What we're seeing here are photos north of the property of the Rainbow Apartments and the strip mall across the street. Next slide. The CVS and the temple just to the west. Next slide. And then the photo at the bottom is turning into some of the more residential parcels immediately to the south. Next slide. So on the left is pre-tornado. On the right is shortly after that, August 25th of last year. The damage, you can see the considerable amount of damage to the roof itself, as well as to the west or left dormer. I should say that the window, the vertical window, and the frame actually was still in place and was relatively unscathed, but certainly all of the stone and the masonry backup was torn off. Next slide. So a temporary roof was installed to protect the space. Scaffolding was erected, and you'll notice also shown on the last slide that there was a small shelter over the door on the lower left-hand side, which is white. That also came down. Next slide, please. So in this case, and apologies, set this up as a PowerPoint, but all of these areas that are identified are what we want to show as part of this repair. So obviously, first, as already mentioned, is that western dormer that is being rebuilt and restored. The second part is the majority of the roof on this side and on which is the south elevation, as well as the north elevation. On the bottom of the elevation is that structure, which you see in small detail here, and we'll see some enlarged plans. There are also some collection boxes and rain conductors that we are replacing. And then last, on the exterior are some miscellaneous repairs, including some spire damage, which you see on the right-hand side, which fronts along East 79. Next slide. Next slide, please. So as mentioned, that left or western dormer, the restoration of that is intended to match the original pre-tornado form, which is what you see on the right-hand side. What we've already, I guess at this point, it'd be appropriate to say that we've already submitted and gotten approved the structural and thermal weather envelope updates and restoration package. And that's been approved by the Department of Building and Housing. So what we're really presenting today are the exterior finishes, the stone, the roofing, trim colors, and so on and so forth. Next slide, please. On the left-hand side are stone masonry pieces that were salvaged from the dormer that had collapsed. And on the right-hand side is stone still on the building. And what you see is a new piece of sandstone from Cleveland Quarries that we're proposing as the replacement stone to match the existing sandstone that's in place. Clearly, the existing stone has that patina that we all know and makes these buildings look the way they do. So in this case, our proposal is to stain the stone with a mineral stain, a nod tone K stain that we've used on other clay masonry and stone projects and had some success with. But the intention is to stain the new stone to match that patina. We're also in the process of doing some mock-ups of the mortar. We're pretty close to getting a good, an appropriate match, but also making sure that we have the right tooling and mortar joint sizes. So we're kind of in that process right now. Something else that Pastor Kelly and ownership are considering is, and it's beyond just the south facade, but kind of a cleaning and further restoration of the entire facade. There is a process that we're going through right now to determine if that's even going to be considered and what level of cleaning. We're recommending relatively mild cleaning, if anything at all. But that's still in process. Regardless, any new stone that's installed would still need to have some type of stain to match a patina, because we're certainly not considering trying to get this the entire facade to look brand new. Next slide, please. The roof itself, as mentioned, and as you see in the photo on the top right, was blown off. We have a new structure that's being installed with ice and water barrier, and the new asphalt shingles are intended to match the existing or original pre-tornado asphalt shingles, just in an onyx black. Next slide, please. You see on the right-hand side a photo and a diagram of the collection boxes and the metal collection boxes and rain conductors, intending to replace those in kind. The collection box actually that came down next to the dormer that collapsed appeared to actually be in relatively good shape, so we may be able to actually salvage that and reinstall it. But the intention is to match what is existing and not change. Next slide, please. So the small shelter over the entry along that south facade, we are planning to also restore to match the original. The one variation that we're going to make is to the railing on the left-hand side. Previously, maybe kind of difficult to see in the photo bottom center, but the railing only traversed the stair portion, and then there was a cross bar between the posts on the left-hand side, which really needed a bit more protection from that elevation difference, because there is a little bit of elevation difference there. So we're creating a new railing, extending that all the way to the existing south facade. Otherwise, we're replicating what was there previously. There is no signage that's part of this package, so any kind of signage you see in that photo is not part of this presentation. Next slide, please. And what you see in these photos are miscellaneous, other miscellaneous damage. So on the left-hand side, a number of the buttresses and arches, column pilasters had come loose, come down. Center top is the mortar joint of the existing spire that remained up, and you can see it's lost quite a bit of its integrity. Some loose masonry in that middle slide. And then on the right-hand side, you see the spire that's along that south facade that did come down. So the intention is to replace these portions with new stone, again, stained to match, and retool, repoint these joints as needed. Next slide, please. And then the last portion that we are proposing to restore and repair and restore is interior. You see on the top right a photo of that existing stained wood plank ceiling. Certainly along those areas of the roof, along the south portion, all of that wood planking was blown away and does not exist anymore. So our intention is to restore those and put those back in place. That is the extent of the repairs that we're presenting today. Appreciate your time and be happy to answer any questions you have.
Excellent. Thank you for the presentation. We'll then move to reviewing Design Review Advisory Committee recommendations.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Certainly not often that we see tornado damage. So this was an interesting case for the committee. They were very supportive. They felt that the proposed repairs meet the Secretary of the Interior standards, and the committee commended the church and the architect on their attention to detail and recommended approval as presented.
Excellent. And then Landmarks Commission staff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This was an interesting one. I was able to go out to the site myself immediately after the tornado as well, so I had my own photographs, and it's also the same tornado that damaged, what's our tavern, Dunham Tavern. So it cut a pretty good swath through there at that time. Additional stuff, a large tree, fell on the way on it. Very big delay. That's gotten worse. So a large tree on the west side fell on it's like 2 slides. On the side, which had to be removed. And then there's some additional damage. Also noted that there were some smaller scrub trees growing up on the Euclid side that we would recommend that those be removed as well. You can look behind you to see stuff. I have some interior shots as well. So this is in keeping with the Secretary of Interior standards. It is important that, there we go. There's the one slide behind from the interior view. There's the exterior view. It'll catch it. Yeah, it's weird. So we are in support. It is appropriate. And we commend everybody for getting this done. We signed off on the temporary roof permits administratively just to get the envelope sealed earlier, so further damage couldn't be done. Thank you.
So, thank you. Sorry, we're all just looking at, even Dan and my screens are not listening. All right, then we will open up the floor to the commission for questions and comments. I'd like to start us off. I guess Mr. Sandberg?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I think you're doing a great job of restoring what was damaged. Everything sounds like it's within Secretary of the Interior standards, and yeah, I think this is a great restoration of what was there. I have a couple questions. First, about the cleaning. I would recommend cleaning the masonry before you stain the new, just so that you're matching to the clean version instead of the dirty version. Same with the mortar. Try to match to a cleaned portion of mortar before you match it, or match something that was not outward facing, and so you're matching to the true color. The other comment I have is about the handrails. Just a question of, are you mounting those to the ramp, or are you mounting them to the building itself?
The railing itself will be mounted to the concrete slab.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're going to be spaced away from the historic stone elevation.
It will not anchor to the stone. Yep, that's correct. And absolutely on the staining, the cleaning will come first. Will need to be first, which will determine what extent what staining would be appropriate at. So in agreement there.
Great. Those are my only comments. Thank you.
Mr. Sandberg. Dr. Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I again would like to echo my colleagues' statements in commending the presenters on sharing with us a wonderful plan for restoring a great structure on Euclid Avenue, that avenue that sometimes people refer to as Millionaire's Row. I really like what's happening on the East 79th Street and within walking distance of that intersection at 79th and Euclid, because I see so much investment in sacred landmarks, not just the Protestant Christian ones, but also those that were sacred to Jewish congregations. And now there's a mosque within walking distance of 79th and Euclid. So again, like to see major investment in the city of Cleveland, and this is pretty major. The other thing I like about what's happening at this site is there was significant investment in preserving the oral history narratives of longtime members of the church. And I don't know if Pastor Kelly's still on the phone, but I think that's also commendable. There was a teacher who lived to be more than 100 years old and had some ties to the Glenville community. But again, love to see the investment in preserving and documenting the history of the people in this community. Even as the demographics have changed over time, I think it's a very worthwhile investment. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Ms. Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to again agree with my fellow commissioners here. This is wonderful that you're able to move forward with the reconstruction of this badly damaged church. I think it looks like a terrific proposal here. I have a couple of questions. Is the entire roof going to be re-roofed, obviously repaired and re-roofed, or is it just the areas facing the parking lot?
In this case, the entire roof will receive new shingles. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so it won't.
Are the shingles the same color as the prior shingles?
That is the intention. I think that some of the photos might show the wear of the previous, so they might have looked a little gray, but they were black from what we've been able to determine.
I've used Absolute Roofing in the past, and they're a really good outfit, and I think they are the right people for this kind of a job. So I'm glad I have some confidence in them that they're going to do a good job with this roof. And again, I'm just happy to see this thoughtful restoration of this wonderful landmark. So thank you very much. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. I echo everything that my fellow commission members have stated, that it's a very sensitive restoration, and you really thought about the details, so I'm in full support of this project. Hearing alignment from the majority of the commission, would someone like to make a motion?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
Can I suggest one recommendation or requirement, I should say, to return for any signage?
Okay.
And then the recommendation to remove your recommendation for cleaning prior to any staining and
Yes.
for masonry repair.
Yes.
All right, so we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, Mr. Dulick seemed to state it first, so we but so we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion?
Madam Chair, would you like them to confirm all final choices with staff for mortar?
Yes. Mr. Sandberg, do you support
Yes.
that? Mr. Dulick?
Yes.
All right, so yes, we'll add that in as a requirement to return and submit to staff for final mortar colors prior to performing the work. Any further discussion? All right, Mr. Nelson, please call roll.
All right, Ms.
Yes.
Anderson? Mr. Dillard?
Yes.
Councilmember Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Sam?
Yes.
Mr. Strickland?
Yes.
Mr. Trassick?
Yes.
Dr. Williams?
Yes.
And Ms. Trout?
Yes,
Madam Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
excellent. Congratulations and good luck with your project.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good day.
You too. We'll then move on to our next applicant, located at 8023 Detroit Road, renovation and restoration.
Okay, I guess it's my turn.
Yes, it is. If you don't mind introducing yourself first, that would be great.
My name is Nick Cafanteris. I am from the Warren, Ohio area, and I lived in California for 18 years with a dream to come back and fix a Victorian home, actually to own a home. This is my first home ever. Warren, Ohio has very few old homes left because the land bank has torn most of them down, and it's economically not viable to get a construction loan over there, but it is viable here because the value's there. So basically, I purchased this home with a construction loan, all the exteriors to be repaired with wood and synthetic materials to replicate as much as possible the original design, including all the original moldings. A Victorian color scheme is to be implemented. There's going to be no siding, all wood as original. The windows with decorative trim and integrity on the second story and the sort of round tower north facade are going to stay. All other windows are in very bad shape, are going to be a new black vinyl window with grid lines at the top to kind of replicate and complement the existing historic windows that are to stay. I'll show you pictures of those. New gutters and roof in keeping with the original style of the period. Of course, modern materials. Slate would have been far too expensive and almost impossible. So we were doing an asphalt roof that looks like slate. Paint to be stripped from limestone, and a brick chimney by chemical peel method, exposing the embedded Cleveland quarry stone, which is embedded within the bricks. Chain link fence eventually to be removed, not in the budget quite yet, but no significant landscaping to be implemented at this time due to the budgetary constraints of the construction loan. However, it will be in the works, and I was looking to do a new wrought iron looking fence in the future. So next slide, please. Okay, the property is located on the corner of 81st and Detroit, which is a very visible promontory. It's kind of a keystone of the neighborhood. It's been kind of laying vacant for about 10 years or so. Next slide, please. All right, here's a photo of the house. This photo shows the new roof, which is already approved to be installed. New railings to be replicating the spindles. We found a couple of the spindles, which was very fortunate, which we're going to have milled to be the same as the spindles that were there before. And there's a sort of a colonial revival Queen Anne details on this home. And 2 of the columns are going to be replaced there as well. They're just wooden posts. We're lucky enough to have some references, and we're going to remill those. Next slide, please. Okay, here's a side view of the house. As you can see, there's plenty of wood that needs to be fixed and plenty of painting to be done. That's the installation of a new roof. As you can see in the back, there is a sort of a low-pitched, one-level ancillary addition, which is where the bathroom is. I do propose to remove that roof and have a sort of deck placed there. That would be a change, not visible from the front, not visible to any sort of Victorian details that are part of the front and side of the building. This would be in the back where there's not much going on. I will show you that drawing here in a bit. Next slide, please. You can go to the next slide.
We're having a little bit of connection issues, so bear with us if it's a little slow. I think it's maybe, there you go.
There it is. Okay, there's the new roof, which has already been approved and is already installed. You can skip that one. Go on to the next slide. Okay, as you can see, these are the areas where there is rotted wood. The most, we're going to be changing those areas with fresh new wood. In the old days, they would take old growth wood and steam it and bend it to kind of conform to that round tower. Nowadays, new growth wood does not have that capability. So the round tower will need to use a bendable synthetic paintable wood grain-like material called AZEK, which was recommended to me by my contractors who are very skilled in this sort of restoration. I was very lucky. AZEK will be able to be bent to kind of conform to those areas where those arrows are. So those areas will have what's called AZEK, and there's a photo to come of that, and I'll show you. And any moldings, as I mentioned before, will be replicated at Cleveland Lumber. kind of see that chimney, how it's painted. That'll be stripped. Okay, so Azek is a synthetic wood material. This is kind of a bad connection, but if you could see it a little better, it does have grain on it, sort of like a raised grain, so that when it's painted, it does look like wood. So those arrows pointing down the bottom is where they're going to bend that synthetic material. And once painted with the Victorian color scheme, you'll never be able to tell that that is different than wood. Next slide. Okay, so here's a site plan hand-drawn by Mr. Joseph Hollis. If anyone's interested in the lot, it is an interesting lot. The back area, you can see that sort of little addition on the south. I'm going to plant an herb garden there and reduce the size of the parking area so that in the patio, you can overlook the herb garden and have coffee in the morning and kind of enjoy a bit of privacy away from a busy street, because Detroit is a busy street. So one of the reasons for that back deck area being added. Next slide, please. Okay, a little bit more information on the site and the parcel. I don't think this is necessary, so you can probably skip this. I think this is a kind of a placeholder where the site plan should have been. So, but a little bit more from the auditor's website. All right, so here's a drawing of the back deck area. Kind of a bad connection, but as you can see, there's already doors there from when this was made into apartments. As I mentioned before, you can't really see it from here, but where the chain link is a parking area. I'm going to dig that out and kind of extend the backyard and create a little herb garden and possibly a bird bath and a fountain. My idea is to give those two back bedrooms a little bit more oomph, more excitement, and keep those doors back there, not make them into windows, and raise that deck, remove that pitched roof, raise it up to code, because you can't step down onto an outdoor patio. I guess it's against the rules to raise that up and have a balustrade around there, replicating the balustrade spindles that we had found, luckily, inside the house. So those will be replicated at Cleveland Lumber, and that little deck area, as you can see, which was nicely drawn by Mr. Hollis, will be where you can overlook the herb garden and kind of take in the fresh air. Next slide. Okay, so here's some photo references for the Victorian color scheme. All these four colors are actually from Sherwin-Williams' historic line of colors. They are going to be in keeping with this color scheme here, which is burgundy trim. The shingles are going to be the Roycroft bottle green off to the right. The sort of horizontal slats on the second level are going to be the second in from right. I can't really read that, but it's more of like a brownish beige color. Next to that would be the burgundy color for the trim, and that sort of library pewter color on the far left. I don't know if you can see the bottom right rendering where there's that sort of like grayish color. That's going to be the horizontal shingles on the first level. There'll be four colors total. Next slide, please. Okay, so after some research, the best and most safe and I guess delicate paint removal will be the Peel Away Heavy Duty Paint Remover by Sherwin-Williams Pro. It's, you know, the best stuff. It was actually recommended by somebody in the Landmarks Commission, which is great. Actually, the name escapes me. So did some research, and I have a bid for that. You can't really see from this bad connection, but there is lots of peeling and chipping in that beautiful chimney. In that brick, you'll see embedded Cleveland limestone, kind of in a Tudor manner, which is, you know, embedded mostly on the left-hand and right-hand sides, right where that pitch changes off, makes a slant. There's Cleveland limestone there. Once all this paint is taken off, it'll be this nice sort of Tudor-looking chimney. Next slide. All right. You really can't see this from these this connection perhaps, but the most clear rendering is off to the right where there's sort of very ornate grid lines in the top pane of the windows. All those windows, including the round window, are going to stay because those grid lines are there. That is 5 windows at the second story round room / tower, that bay window in the master suite, and that round window. So those are going to stay. And they're going to be painted the same color as the new windows. The other windows are going to replicate those grid lines, and they're going to look like the windows below. So they're going to look exactly the same from the street view, and they're going to be in keeping, complementing the ones that are to stay. One of the reasons why I'm keeping these windows, aside from aesthetic value, is that this is the master suite, and I don't expect kids to be in this area that much. So the other windows are very dangerous. The weights are exposed. They're not moving. They're cracked. They are basically inoperable, most of them. So some we are keeping, some that have sort of clouded. There's one stained glass window, and there's one sort of clouded window with an interesting sort of unique glass, which we're keeping. The rest are changing. You can move on. Slide. I believe that concludes my presentation.
Excellent. Thank you for the very thorough presentation. Move on. Before we get to questions and comments, we'll move on to Design Review Advisory Committee recommendations.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This project was reviewed by the Historic West Cleveland Design Review Advisory Committee on April 17th. The committee discussed a lot of the projects, like the porch balustrade to be replicated, the window grids, and the unique kind of situation with the shingle needing to be replaced on the tower and how they're going to do that with the new siding. Ultimately, after all discussion, they recommended approval as presented.
Excellent. Thank you. And Landmarks Commission's recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes. Staff met with the applicant and his contractors a few weeks ago out on the site and kind of looked over everything, discussed the scope of work, materials, products, that kind of thing. Ultimately, we agree with the recommendation of the local design review committee. I think this is a great project. It's great to see a building like this saved, and feel that it meets the Secretary of the Interior standards.
Excellent. Thank you. We'll then open up the floor to the commission for questions and comments. Who'd like to start us off? So,
I'll start off. Thank you, Madam Chair. Little personal note, I used to live on 81st quite a while. And I know this house very well. Had the stars aligned differently, I might have beat you to buying this house. So I'm really excited that you're renovating it and restoring it to bring back some life to it. I think it's a great house. I think the neighborhood's a really nice neighborhood. So I'm really happy for you and happy for the house. Sounds like you're a great steward of the house and hopefully do some great things with it. So I think a couple of my questions, if I remember correctly, it's been a couple of years since I've lived on that street, but it did have some foundation issues. Is that still an issue? Have those been fixed or modified, or is that within your scope of work?
Absolutely. There'll be tuck pointing and fixing of the foundational issues as part of the construction loan award. So yes, that's part of it. Mm-hmm.
And then are you, I guess I don't know if it pertains to us specifically, but are you planning to convert the house back to a single family, or are you maintaining the separate multifamily divisions in the house?
This will absolutely be a single family. all the interior Victorian elements were stolen years ago. I have actually been purchasing new mantles, new newel post, and new details, and it's going to be a single family as it once was.
And then I guess the current windows are the historic wood windows. Is that correct? It's what it sounded like with pocket weights and things like that.
They're from 1905. They look to be the original ones, I believe, most of them. Yep.
And then you're proposing a black vinyl window?
Yes.
Typically, we don't approve vinyl on all elevations, specifically black, because it tends to warp over time. You may want to relook at your color choices. That may not give you as long of a lifespan as you are hoping for. It's great to hear that you're restoring or saving the front elevation, second floor. Are those storms over the original windows, the white that we're looking at?
Yes, those are those white portions are storm windows. Yes.
And you're keeping the storm. You're just going to paint them.
I don't know. I don't know what we're doing with those. I'd like to get rid of them. I'd like for these old windows, these new windows, to be enough. But that really hasn't been discussed. If there are storm windows, they would not be white. They'd be bronze color or black.
Okay. Yeah, I think if you decide to go with storms, I would recommend that goes before the staff as your color choices or anything like that. I would recommend a different color of vinyl if the board ultimately approves vinyl throughout the house.
So on that note, I didn't want to shake things up too much, but I did discover that a bronze color would not hurt the budget. I had chosen black because of the budgetary concerns, but we can do a bronze color, not black, which I'm leaning towards, which would be a dark brown.
I think the lighter colors tend to last longer. Just a suggestion.
Okay.
The darker colors tend to warp, and you'll have to replace sooner.
Right.
But otherwise, I'm really excited to see this house come back to life, and I want to thank you for doing it.
It's been my pleasure. It's been a dream of mine, so thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Andrew. I think Mr. Wilson has a comment.
Yeah, Madam Chair, if I may, I just wanted to note that yes, Ohio Building Code requires screens in at least half of operable windows. So that's just something to consider as far as the question of removing the old storm windows or not. Code may require you to keep them just to have a screen for the operable window.
I believe there are
something
screens.
to look into.
Yeah, I believe there are screens in the new windows. Is that what the question is? Or
Typically, yeah.
Yeah, no, there are screens. Yes, I believe so. Yep.
Madam Chair, I have a comment.
Yes.
Yes, I have a comment. On one of your previous pictures, you had certain areas of the wood that you said that you would replace. In one of your screens, you said you're going to replace the wood around the lighted green areas.
Yeah, those are the areas with the, I guess, with the worst damage, but they'll be kind of replacing and repairing wood throughout.
Okay, that was my next question. What would you do with the other wood of the house since you are renovating the exterior per se? And what color will the house be?
There was a Victorian color scheme, I think second to last slide. All the wood that's in good shape will be chipped and then repainted. Whatever has to be replaced will be replaced in a manner that is seamless, and once you paint it, you will not be able to tell the old from the new.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. That's it, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Gray. I'd like to echo what my fellow council or commission members have said. I think this is a really, I commend you for the focus on your details and really trying to restore this. I also live very close to this and ironically was just admiring this house like 2 weeks ago as I was driving past it, wondering when it would be restored. So it's great to see it come forward. I echo the comment though on the windows. Usually we do not accept vinyl. I would make the exception on the rear and sides, but I think the front should be a composite if or an aluminum clad wood to be consistent with our requirements. In this case, and I also echo the concern of Mr. Stanberry about the concern of vinyl in darker colors, that they don't perform that well. And so with such a large investment that you're making in this house, we want to make sure the windows, will perform the way that you want for the longevity of the house. So I would recommend that you investigate a composite, which is a little bit more cost effective than a aluminum clad wood, but does maintain its performance better than a darker vinyl.
I did look into that, and long story short, this is a construction loan, and I could only get so much money for it without it going upside down. So that kind of thing would cost $40,000. We don't have near that budget, and there's a lot of work on this house. I would love to somehow ask permission to go with vinyl, because I don't think I can accomplish everything that needs to be done on this house if I had to get that type of window. I have searched endlessly for this issue and looked into it. I know you're concerned with it. Keeping the original windows as wood would, be very dangerous for my kids that come there, would live there. And if I were to go ahead and do that type of window, I wouldn't be able to fix the very important parts of actually preserving the house for 100 years, which are structural. That would really seep away from that budget. And as I mentioned, if I were to get that, if I were to have that kind of budget to do those windows, I would be upside down, and the loan would have never been approved. So I would love to see if I can, ask for permission for that cheaper window.
We understand the issue that such a large house has with windows. I think we're specifically talking about like the 5 windows on the front elevation are the ones that I'm referring to, which are the 3 in the lower bay and it looks like 3 in the turret or tower.
There's 5 there.
There's 5 in the turret.
Yeah, there's 1, 2, 3. I think there's 5 on the lower. Yeah, that's the upper ones which are staying. But there is the bay in the bottom. Yeah.
So let us see what the other commission members say, but that's my recommendation is to be consistent with our requirements. I personally would support making the exceptions for the side and the rear to be vinyl, but the front to be an upgraded material, either composite or aluminum clad. But overall, I'm in full support of this project. I do want to recognize that we do have someone here from Councilwoman Spencer's office, Ms. Blazar.
Hi, good morning. Thank you very much. I would like to read a statement from Councilmember Spencer, if that would be possible.
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Cavanteris, this is a beautiful home, and we're thrilled to see action, of course, taken at this property. Councilmember Spencer states that this property has languished since being transferred from the County Land Bank and Detroit Shoreway Community Development Organization back in 2018, up until its current owner in March of 2024. So we look forward to hearing more about your plans, which we've heard an excellent presentation this morning, and seeing these plans really come into action. I apologize if I missed it. Is this going to be your primary residence? I'm sorry, you're muted.
Yes, it is. Yes.
Great. That's good to hear. This is a corner property, and I'm just curious if there's any feedback from the commission regarding the second level porch that would be going over that little jut out that's in the back of the house, even though it is the rear elevation, it's a corner, so you see it pretty predominantly, and it might just be from my sight line. I'm not seeing it as well. So I just would encourage, any comments from the commission regarding that element. So thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Lazar. We'll move back to the commission for questions and comments.
Sorry, I have another comment, I guess. I don't know where your construction loan is coming from, but I would encourage you, if you haven't already, to look into the Cleveland Restoration Society's home loan program. That may help you find additional funding or, help you, assist you in some ways with your window situation or any of the other structural work that you're doing to the house.
What was the name of the organization again? I'm actually new to this town, so.
The Cleveland Restoration Society.
Okay.
The home loan.
It's called the Heritage Home Loan Program.
Heritage Home Loan.
Heritage Home, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland.
That's all.
Okay, other questions and comments from, oh, sorry, Ms. Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am so enthusiastic about your very thoughtful and respectful restoration of this home. I too used to live on Franklin and 79th. I used to walk my dogs past this home all the time, and it just, see it spiral into deterioration. This is just heartwarming to see this. I love your color choices on your siding and your roof. I'm glad that you're going the extra mile to have the spindles replicated along with the support posts. I know, Cleveland Lumber does good work there. So I really appreciate what you're doing here. I have a question which is probably not at all relevant to what we're doing, but I gotta ask. There's raised panel wainscoting in the entrance area in the dining room. Do you plan to keep that? I'm kind of jealous.
Absolutely. No,
All right.
it's one of the reasons why I bought the house. It's one of the only things that's historic that's left. So that's going to be kept. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a window. I think it's in the dining room. It's like a transom kind of window. It looks like there's some interesting mullions. Are you keeping that?
Absolutely. All of it. And the stained glass and everything.
All right. Wonderful. Given the financial restraints, because rehabbing a house like this is incredibly expensive, especially doing it correctly, which you are trying to do. And given the level of detail that you're focusing on, things like the chimney, I mean, you could just repaint that, but no, you're gonna bring that back as a key architectural feature. I can almost I'm inclined to give you a pass on the windows. We've allowed vinyl windows in the past as, hardship situations. And if you can get more funds from the Restoration Society, I would go for the composite window, because it's going to be a better quality window and serve you better over time. But I'm inclined to, I want to make this project work for you, because you're really making it work for the community. I think it's going to be exemplary for other people who buy deteriorated houses, to see that this kind of home can be restored. I have a question regarding, and I guess it's just a clarification. There's a back decking that it looks like it reached up to a third floor, probably a suite, like you probably acted as a fire escape. That's all going to go, right?
That's already gone. Yeah.
Okay.
That's gone. And that door on the third level is going to turn to window.
Okay. All right. I don't really have a problem with that second floor balcony that you're erecting. For one thing, visually, we already had this kind of thing going on, so it's going to obviously be an improvement. I think it would probably would be nice. Well, we do have a photo rendering here, and I'm fine with it. It's probably far enough away from the corner, and it's set back off of the street enough that I don't think it'll be real noticeable. So, I'm fine with your balcony overlooking your herb garden. I just have to commend you. This is the kind of thing I like saying. So, you have my full support.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
I'm
Ms.
trying to encourage less siding and more painting.
Which
Hopefully.
we appreciate. We appreciate. Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Mr. Strickland?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I again commend the applicant for undertaking this project. It's going to be wonderful with the attention to detail and the commitment that he's making to restoring this wonderful house. I just have a technical suggestion for you. Using AZEK on the turret, you have to be very mindful that AZEK will warp and totally bend out of shape if the paint color is too dark. So if you look at their literature, they recommend a LRV, light reflective value, of 55 or higher, and a very specific paint. I don't have the literature in front of me, but I'm very familiar with AZEK products, and so isn't Cleveland Lumber. So
Okay.
just make sure that the paint that you're picking out is compatible with the requirements for the AZEK trim. And also, you're going to be very disappointed, I think, with the black vinyl windows and their longevity, because they really can warp. Because again, they do not have the higher light reflective value in the darker colors. So I could support the vinyl windows, but I would recommend a lighter color for better durability. So if you're going to go with the dark color, I would strongly recommend that you go with a composite material rather than vinyl.
I
Those are my suggestions.
plan on many improvements in the house going further, including the fence. I'd like to get new windows in the future as well. I just want to get it livable. This is within my budget. I want to live there, and once I fix it, it will increase in value, and there will be the opportunity for home equity lines of credit. As of now, this was the maximum of what I could qualify for, what the house was worth. So I'm just trying to work within those constraints.
Understood. And I think, as this has been expressed, the commission's looking forward to working with you in that endeavor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. Other questions or comments from the commission, or someone like to put forward a motion hearing fairly consistent alignment?
This is our council representative office.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Ms. Lazar.
I just wanted to add one additional comment that I forgot. So thank you for letting me chime back in. Mr. Cavanteras, we want to commend you also for supporting a local business and using Cleveland Lumber. It is also in Ward 15, and there's just a gem in the neighborhood. So thank you very much. And I think the project, as you've described, is just going to be a true benefit for this historic district.
I hope so. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for those additional comments. Other questions or comments from the commission, or would someone like to put forward a motion?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve this project as presented, with the recommendation that they look into other window options, other window colors, as well as the paint colors on the AZEK board. And I encourage you to look into the Cleveland Restoration Society's program. Are there any other comments from me?
There's recommendations or requirements, sorry.
Those would be recommendations, strong recommendations, not to do a black vinyl for the longevity of your own house and your endeavors. But I think it sounds like the board is okay with giving you a pass on vinyl. So that would be a recommendation.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
I'll second that with one qualification.
Continue.
I second it as long as we don't, as an alternative to the black vinyl, have white vinyl.
So with the requirement that all final colors be submitted to staff,
Yes, that sounds good.
Mr. Sandberg, you
Yes.
support that?
Yep.
Okay, so we have a motion, a second with an additional requirement. Any additional comments or discussion? All right, Mr. Munson, please call the roll.
All right, Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Dulick,
Yes.
Councilwoman Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Sandberg,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Trasick,
Yes.
Dr. Williams,
Yes.
and Ms. Trout.
Reluctantly no to stay consistent with the alternate materials on the front elevation.
Making me count the votes then. Madam Chair, the motion passes 7-1.
All right, congratulations, you have passed, and we truly look forward to seeing this house come back to life. Thank you for your.
Thank you very much. Thanks,
and
guys.
Good luck.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Good luck, thank you. Our first applicant, the City of Cleveland Demolition Bureau, correct? Asked for the project to be removed from our agenda at this time. So we will not be reviewing case number 24-036. We will conclude our certificates of appropriateness and we'll move on to concept plan reviews. We'll look at our first applicant located at 1422 West 74th Street, new construction. I'd like to welcome the applicant. Feel free to unmute your mic, announce yourself, and tell us about your project.
All right, thank you very much. This is from Stantec Architecture on behalf of Waterson Lake Apartments and Bridging the Gap. And we'll be presenting today on the Waterson Lake Elementary School response to the City of Cleveland's RFP for new housing.
We're having a few technical difficulties at this time with the presentation. So if there's any background information you'd like to do without a slide, please proceed. If not, hold on and we'll try to get this back up on the screen.
Great. Yep, no worries. Yeah, so we responded to the RFP that the City of Cleveland put out probably about 6 months ago now, and we're awarded based on our use of the site, density, and responses to the original comments that we had received from the community that were included in the original RFP. So what we have to present today is kind of an early version of what we're hoping to follow through with. And again, I just want to reiterate that it is early. These are our massings, but also we are working through this with OHFA, and we do have a unit count and mix that we do need to hit. So we're very excited to work with the commission and the community, which we've already reached out to, and to accommodate as many of these comments moving forward, and really looking forward to the comments that we hear today to improve the direction of the project overall.
Dramatic pause. We're almost there. We're almost there. Thank you for your patience.
No, yeah, no problem. So I can get started by saying that the site itself is on Detroit Avenue, situated between 74th and 75th. And part of that overall site plan is to be an extension, a walking path extension of Clinton Avenue. Here we go. And that view that we just passed was from 74th towards the Clinton Avenue. But we can take it from this slide that just shows that site context, the number of parcels that were allocated for this development, and the site, did house the old Waterson Lake Elementary School, which was raised for this project. And prior to that, there was the historic school that sat on the corner of Detroit and 74th.
Still haven't been. Please stand by.
I don't know if you heard that. We're still having some technical difficulties, so we appreciate your patience. All right.
Yeah, I can.
You can continue to talk, and then we will catch up when we see the visuals.
Okay, great. So the the program, and I'll try and speak so that way when the visuals come back up, everybody can catch up. But on that site, we do have a multifamily portion, and we do have a townhouse portion, and then there is an open green space portion. So those three elements we thought was important in developing this site, and what the community comments had been early on, what we continue to hear, and also the requirements of making the project viable. So along Detroit Avenue, we have our 5-story structure, and that is the multifamily portion that holds 125 or 124 units. Along 75th Street, project south of that extension from Clinton Avenue would be 12 townhouses, two segments of 6 with back-to-back garages with a curb cut off of 75th. And then on 74th, between the Clinton Avenue extension and the rest of the site south, would be kind of our open green space. Right now, we kind of have a playground, which we felt or we heard was really important from the community early on that they lost in the demolition of the school. And then some also additional green space that we've got allocated, whether it be raised planters, green space, pocket park, pollinating garden. Those are all things that we're considering as we move forward. Great. This slide here just orients the site. What's outlined in blue are all the parcels allocated to the site.
Seems that the presentation is files too large, so it's giving our computer
massive issues.
Some issues. Maybe if I open it separately.
Okay.
Wait, just for the, yep.
Okay.
Great. Yeah, we can jump in on the site plan actually. So this is our first floor and how we've got the site divided. So again, with the larger structure, we have 3 faces to the building: 75th, 74th, and Detroit Ave. And we try to address each one of those faces a little differently. So along Detroit Avenue, we've gone up to the property line, and that is also going to contain our commercial or business retail area, to be determined. Right now it's white box. And we've purposely left the corner out. Part of it was a little nod to the original footprint, although set back much further. The original Waterson Lake footprint had that interesting kind of L shape or angle that addressed that corner with an open green spot. We felt that it was important to have some green space on Detroit that also had a little bit of respite or plaza to those retail areas that will be programmed in the future. The majority of the first floor of that tower will be parking. We decided to put all the parking that we have underneath the building so that way it would be screened from the neighborhood community. We didn't really want to put an open lot adjacent to a large building. The residential lobby is off of the corner there of 74th and what becomes that walking extension of Clinton Avenue. And that houses some of the first floor amenities, the apartment building, the lobby, and other entrance elements associated with the residential above. And then off of 75th Street, that first floor does contain a program for community space. So that'll be readily available for community functions, gatherings, meetings, things of that nature. Plan left, we can kind of see the footprints there of those 12 townhouses back to back with the parking in between. Again, we wanted to fall in line with everything that we had seen both on site and within the regulations of not having parking that would be facing either street and reducing curb cuts along the way. And then along 74th, there are the outdoor areas that we had programmed there to kind of capture on that walking path and the extension of the Clinton Avenue area. And right now we're showing playground, some planting beds, which may be open just to open green space. And some of the comments we've heard before too is that maybe reducing that throughway to just pedestrian path and providing additional green space or increasing that green space as we move forward with the project. Next slide, please. The next, the other slide was just the upper floors. Typical units in that multifamily tower, we do have a mix of 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom, and studios. And then those townhouses are a mix of 3 and 4-bedroom units. So that way we've really got an opportunity to provide a variety of different housing types, depending on what that need is. These are a few axons. Again, just the kind of early massing. We have the taller residential tower pulled back from the street, but we are maintaining some low first floor. Those lobbies, or the residential lobby adjacent to the street, the screening for the parking, and of course on the retail side along Detroit Avenue, kind of bringing that building fully onto the street, but the upper portions of the building we do want to set back. We do realize that the scale, the height of the building is at the higher end of the zoning regulations and what's around it. So we didn't want to crowd too much. So that was one of our options to do to address that. Next slide, please. Typical upper floor layout. That little bit of green space is a cover. Second floor canopy over top of the parking that would be some green space for residents. You can kind of see a little bit of the shaded profile on the plan south and plan east of this drawing that are the lower roofs and how that addresses the actual street frontage. Can keep going, just some early sections, more or less just showing that first floor is open. The majority of it is for parking, while there's 4 levels of residential above. Keep going. There's a lot of angles on the building, just as it addresses to the site. So there's a lot of elevations here, but they're predominantly the same. And again, very early massing. We would like to have a first floor be masonry, tie into more of the historic nature. We know we have to develop our fenestration patterns and how those relate to the adjacent buildings and the fabric of the street. Our upper floors, 2 through 5 of the residential aspect will probably most likely be a cement board or another wood siding product. The floors 2, 3, and 4, we wanted those to be a little bit of a field, and then the top we would like a more dynamic material as we get further into that selection, trying to recreate a little bit of that first floor base on the retail building, and then cornice as a reinterpreted style, and then to make the facade a little bit more dynamic as we start to introduce our balconies using that same material that we have at that cornice level. We understand that it is a long building, and there are some challenges with the scale and the budget associated with it, but we want to make sure that we are providing a building that does have a dynamic facade that's not just flat, one-dimensional. We really are pushing to get some depth and create some shadows to create a layered facade, so that way it's not just massive on the property line. And we could probably skip or quickly go through again more elevations, a lot of angles on the building. So we were trying to get some straight on, but as you can see, some of the grayed out areas are angled building beyond. The corners, we are trying to incorporate, again, some of those dynamic options. Above the residential lobby, we've got some outdoor space that's available for each resident floor. And as we further develop this, we're trying to incorporate elements of that on the front at Detroit as well. Keep going. So our townhouses, originally we did we had proposed 3 and 4 story. As we've developed this, we are looking at the size and the scale of the neighborhood as well, and really like the recommendations to lower those into more scale. So we are trying to recreate the massing now to top out at 3 stories, so we can better integrate with the adjacent community. And that was kind of the concept all along, is that at Detroit was our largest scale of building, and we were using that extension of Clinton Avenue as a delineation path to where we would take our mid-rise building that was more akin to buildings along Detroit. And then once we got beyond south of that Clinton Avenue extension, we would fall much more into a residential scale at a 3.5 story with roof lines and pitches. And as I said before, these are early massings, and we did hear in previous presentations of more traditional stylings and architectural. So those are things that we're considering right now as we further these plans. Again, not entirely representative of the final selection of materials, but these are some massings, again, kind of showing scale of the building, massing, setbacks, fenestration patterns. Most of our focus has been from the green space out. That walking path is seen in a larger image in the lower right, having that walk through and a juxtaposition of the grids aligning with Clinton Avenue, as well as aligning with the adjacent streets to have these little nooks and overhangs that are adjacent to the community room and the resident function. So there can be some outdoor space associated with each ground level space. And also, as we continue incorporating a lot of landscaping, I know we had spoke at our previous meeting with Gordon Square that including a street trees with the traditional curb tree sidewalk as we move in is something that we're going to consider as well. These are some rudimentary planning devices that we use for our OFA submission. These are mainly about water retention, site grading, understanding the flow of pedestrian traffic through the site, and integration of lighting. We feel that lighting is going to be an important part of this, of having the green space and that pedestrian throughway, making sure it is well lit for a safe amenity day or night. Continue. Some early calculation for water retention. We do want to use some of the site retention in and around the playground, so that way to kind of set the playground back from 74th and use that retention as kind of a natural barrier between the street and the playground. So that way it's visual shielding, but also a physical barrier from children at play and the street itself. Again, landscaping, that's something that we felt was really important to this. And as we continue to progress this project, the paving areas, we hear that there's an opportunity there to reduce paving and increase green space to maximize the ability of usage for this lot for the adjacent community. A little bit of an enlarged area there on Detroit and 74th. Again, we mentioned that little bit of a nod to the original footprint of the historic school. Obviously not set back as far as it originally was, but we did feel that it was important to have some green space there, and potential for a small park and plaza that's associated with the retail or business function that ultimately would go in. I think this was just more of our site plannings that we use for OFA to demonstrate understanding grade, understanding the stormwater retention, and site lighting. We can continue. And our approach for parking on this was to incorporate the city's new transit demand management. We did just receive a new version of this the other day that came out publicly, and we're looking at to approach it in a similar manner now that it is fully available. But our program for this kind of easily approached beyond the required points. And that's something that we feel is really important for the site as well. Being in the transit district, being along Detroit Avenue, we're really looking forward to including amenities such as bike rooms, pedestrian stations with all the information for adjacent public transit, and also including a variety of options within our parking to address how it's decoupled from the rent structure and available to the business as well. So that's kind of our cursory pass at this from how we understood the RFP, how we responded to it, and now how we're starting to incorporate comments from community and landmarks, and definitely appreciate the comments that you have today.
All right, thank you for the presentation. We will then move to the local design review committee recommendations.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. This project was reviewed by the Historic West Cleveland Design Review Advisory Committee on April 17th. They had many comments. I will summarize them. Overall, it was looking forward to seeing the development progress, but they discussed the scale of Waterston Lake and the homes around it. Seems kind of large with the townhomes and the building along Detroit. Mentioned that it needs to fit the scale of the historic districts. There were some comments about density and some conversation about that with the requirements from OFA to fit a certain number of units. They mentioned the little pocket park space on Detroit. Now the Detroit elevation should have more of a focus. It's a Gordon Square historic district. It should have more, as they put it, be less of an afterthought in their words. And they gave suggestions for other green spaces in the community that the developers can look to as examples of workable green spaces in that neighborhood, which there are quite a few. They discussed the urban and pedestrian feel with the landscape along the streets and recommended, as mentioned, more grass, less pavers, more trees, street trees along 74th to really bring shade to that area, to soften it a little bit with the large building. They also mentioned that, adding more programmable spaces along Detroit, having these storefronts be a little more similar to historic storefronts with recessed entries and kind of that storefront feel along Detroit. And also to feel less like a podium with apartments above with the setbacks, and so maybe possibly another setback on the 5th floor just to add a little bit more of that depth. But overall, they were very interested in seeing it move forward. They did request maybe having another meeting at a more concept level as it's going through, just to kind of see and have more time to digest everything and look at it. Also, they discussed the pathway along West that kind of is that continuation of West Clinton, if that's fire access, and so opportunities to have like pavers or grasscrete or something that still looks grassy but could have the fire trucks right on that if needed. And appreciation for the TDM and getting into the area. That's it.
Thank you.
That's all.
Public comment received?
We also received a letter and public comment received April 12th. The letter writer mentioned that it seemed very intense along like a wall along West 74th, and made it feel very transitory. It's already a street that is driven on to connect, and it's driven on very quickly. And so they didn't want to have that continuation of that transitory feel on the street and just say it needs to fit in more with the historic districts around it and appreciates more community involvement and the use of feedback that they get over their development time. And then one thing I missed was, they asked if maybe having more glass or public art at that corner on Detroit to add more interest in that little corner, not just the pocket park, but on the buildings.
Okay, then move on to landmark staff recommendation.
Madam Chair, before the staff gives its comments, I think Ms. Lazar was here from Ward 15 Council Office. I think she has a statement as well.
Yes, please go ahead, Ms. Lazar.
You're on mute.
There we go. Sorry about that. It's been so long since the pandemic, we're still on mute. Okay. So let's see here. It's a very brief statement from Councilmember Spencer. Basically, she is recommending that the developer come back to Landmarks for a second schematic review before proceeding to the final review. So thank you very much.
Thank you for that feedback. We'll move back to landmarks.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, just wanted to note that staff was not part of the RFP process, so we're kind of starting from a disadvantage, with this being a landmark site. But we have, had discussions with the developer. I guess a few of our thoughts, I guess feeling that the pocket park there at the corner is not necessarily appropriate. I mean, we understand the nod to the old school, but feel that could be better accomplished through the actual architecture of the building instead of the negative space. The building, the former school was sited so uniquely that trying to recreate that in any kind of way feels inappropriate and kind of forced to us. I guess we largely agree with a lot of the local design review committee's comments. Did want to note that the last time this went to like a public meeting, like a community meeting, was back in November, I believe. They are intending to go present to the community on May 7th. So we had encouraged them to get, design review committee, landmarks commission, and the public comment all on the same plans. So we're looking at the same thing that the design review committee did last week, and that hopefully the public will see at the beginning of May. From then they'll make design revisions. They're welcome to come back through that whole process as concept schematic again, which the councilwoman's office is encouraging. But ultimately, we'll work with them to get to a final project that will then go through the normal design review process and get plenty of public input, I'm sure. Yeah, I guess the other, aside from the corner, or other primary issue concern was that Detroit Avenue facade. We contextually that we feel that really needs to fit in with the rest of the commercial historic district. So we'd like to see it, enlivened in some way more. I think, building to the corner and kind of respecting the context of the street is important. And with some further design work as they flesh out some of these details, we just think special attention needs to be paid to Detroit.
All right, excellent, thank you. We'll then open up the floor to the commission for questions and comments. Ms. Anderson, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's nice to see that they're retaining the playground and the parking is underground. I have not seen the RFP, and I'm wondering if how consistent the RFP can be with the requirements of the local historic district. Unlike a lot of other historic areas and commercial areas in the city, Detroit Shoreway is very blessed in that it miraculously has retained a lot of its original buildings like the City Savings Building, which, was threatened a while back, and the Gordon Square Arcade, which also was threatened a while back, but, they're now, viable and part of the community. And, another building is the Kennedy Building. And I think those buildings should, the aesthetic and the materiality, the colors should strongly influence what's going to be built in this area. Because again, there's enough original there that the consistency should be maintained. I really have trouble with the massing. I mean, the step backs and all that, I don't think adequately address the massing issues that I have. I agree with staff regarding that pocket park or that setback on the corner. The original Watterson Lake School was, it was more than the setback, as they say. It was a very, very elegant, very handsome building. And I think instead of doing the setback, maybe putting a more inviting and more interesting corner entrance or just a corner there would be preferred, at least by me. And maybe instead of, the massing that we have, we can eliminate that pocket park. The other thing is, I don't know whether there's a need for another community room. Mount Carmel Church has a community room. I think there's a community room in the Gordon Square Arcade. So, maybe that could be incorporated into other programming, and that way we can eliminate some of the massing. So those are basically my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Mr. Doolittle, did you have a hand up?
I think Dr. Williams had her hand up.
I don't see it right now. Dr. Williams, do you have your hand up?
No, I don't.
Okay. Mr.
Not at
Doolittle?
this time.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I concur with a lot of the comments from Design Review Committee and staff and Ms. Anderson. I think the approach to the massing, I think there is a lot of clues in the historic building. On the positive side, I do think the building actually, to all the comments about the kind of monolithic quality, but I also think it's challenging from kind of a layered perspective, where why would the Detroit facade have the same treatment as all of 74th and even the facade along this new extension of Clinton, which I think urbanistically is very nice. I agree, it really wants to be as green as possible and feel, even if it's going to be like a Cleveland alley, it wants to feel like a passage through a park rather than a park with an alley in it, you know what I mean? But I think on the massing, I think each section of the building, from even a materiality perspective, but particularly for how it addresses the street, and this includes the corner. I appreciate the idea of the corner gesture, but part of the beauty of that old school was that it was a tripartite gesture that had an entrance in the middle of it. It was to frame a massively expressive welcome to students, right? So how that corner becomes something not like that literally, but I think in spirit, and really has the appropriate scale and breakdown. But I feel really strongly that Detroit Avenue street wall should have a street wall. I think that I'm very troubled by that setback at the first floor. I would not mind a setback at an upper floor to kind of trade those two. But I think also if you look at the old school photos for clues, what's really interesting about it, how it on the corner there, it addressed both Detroit and West 73rd. I think there's, again, I can't say specifically yet, but I can imagine the Detroit facade meeting the street. I can imagine a different piece that almost feels porch-like or lower scale at the corner that's articulated appropriately. But then by the time you get to this lawn building there, there's no reason that that has to be I don't think. I understand budget constraints and affordability are a big goal of this, which is great. Obviously, we would support. But I think that there are opportunities for slightly taller areas of the building along, you can imagine even that bump, wherever it occurs there on the first floor before you have that notch. You can imagine that being a 3-story building. You can imagine it, and I think there's, if you let that talk to the scale of the buildings across the street, I think that the stepping down or the modulation and transition to scale from Detroit to the neighborhood scale can occur within the context of that middle building. And then it's like you got the head on Detroit, you got the long body in the middle, and then you got the tail over along that alley. I think each one, without resorting to getting too corny or too much variety, I think you can really, I see a lot of opportunities here for letting each one really speak to the particular urban condition it's trying to address, or the sensitivity to scale that it's trying to solve. So those are really my comments. Obviously, I applaud the project. I'm concerned less about the density per se than I am about how that density expresses itself in a nutshell.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Bueller. Other questions and comments from the commission? I guess I'll go next. I do agree with a lot of what the committee had said, and Mr. Dulick, I think my main focus is also on Detroit. And then similarly, is what the committee said. I'm in support of the project. Sorry, I didn't start with that. I think it is a great, use of this property, but I think the design needs to relate more to the surroundings and really break down the feeling. Right now, the design feels very podium and apartments above. So I'd encourage you actually to pull some of the mass closer to the street on Detroit and the two side streets so that it feels more in scale with the residential 2.5 stories on the south side of the property and the 3 stories that are very often seen between the multifamily on the east and the 2-story commercial that's on its west. Relating to those elements all together, that's and I think the Pocket Park should be rethought and use the architecture to maybe bridge that street line to give you that opportunity to step the architecture that you're looking for, but relate more to the surroundings. And the resultant space may just be a small plaza, because I think the size of that is probably just going to be that. And there's nothing worse than having a plaza that's not activated. So having it, appropriately scaled so it could be activated with retail if you do pursue something in that area, or be a circulation space, when it's not, because this is a very busy street with people coming, northbound and southbound. Well, more northbound which one way. So I think I'm in support of the project uses on the site, but I do think just attention to the detail and relating it more to the context, especially Detroit, is still required. Other feedback from other commission members? Mr. Sanders.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Like everybody said, I think you have missed an opportunity on Detroit. I think the commercial space needs to face Detroit. The entrance should be on Detroit. And I don't know that the Pocket Park is working for this design. I think it may, you could put another commercial space in the Pocket Park as another tenant instead of a tree and some green space. And I think that may be a more thoughtful design on Detroit. I don't have a problem with 5 stories on Detroit or not even setting it back. I think that's appropriate on Detroit. And I think as you go further into the site, it should probably drop down to maybe 4 or set back further for the 5th. I think everybody else has covered kind of the bulk of the main building, but I think the townhouses are also not as successful as they could be, specifically the ones in the middle of the site. I think those should be brought down to, I think that's 74th, and face the street like they would a normal, regular residential house, and maybe tuck the garden and the playground inside the site, still accessible to the neighborhood, but more of a hidden gem on the site instead of tucking those townhouses back inside the site. I think those need to be more prominent on the side street as they are on the western side. They should be on the eastern side. Yeah, I think that's the majority of my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Sandberry. Other questions and comments from the commission? Mr. Hewlett?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do think that the corollary with the massing is the materiality. I feel very strongly that a lot of the character of the buildings of this scale on Detroit in the historic district are masonry. I think there's more flexibility as you go down. I think as you go around the site, but I think there's something about that Detroit piece from a materiality perspective. I would probably recommend considering masonry expression. It's you look at the bank down the street, you look at some of these other buildings, you look at the building across the street, and that is the character, that's the quality. I think there's some opportunity for creativity with possibly bays or colors of masonry, what have you. But I think the size, the scale, and the strength of that particular piece of this project is what everybody's not only going to see, it's going to really send a very strong message about how important this project is, which I do support, obviously. But I think that piece and Detroit warrants that level of quality materiality. Still understanding the budgetary constraints, I think focusing there for some of the balancing of where resources are allocated is extremely important.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hewlett. Not seeing any additional questions and comments from the commission. Does the applicant feel like you received enough feedback from the commission to continue development of your design?
Yes, we appreciate the comments. A lot of these are comments that we agree with, strongly agree with, and very excited to come back and hopefully show you something that is in line with both what we're thinking and what you expect.
Excellent. Well, we look forward to having you return.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. That concludes our concept plan reviews. We will then move on to our National Register of Historic Places nominations. We have 2 on our front. Yep. To review today. Go ahead, Mr. Musson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just do a quick summary of the Cedar Branch of the YMCA, or the Young Men's Christian Association nomination. It sits at 7515 Cedar Avenue. The Cedar Branch YMCA was constructed in 2 phases from 1941 to 1948. It is a T-shaped steel frame building clad with multicolored brick laid in a Flemish bond and trimmed with stone. The base of the T has a square footprint that was constructed between 1941 and 1942. And in 1948, an addition was added to the rear or north elevation of the building. The rectangular addition forms the top of the T, extending just 1 bay beyond the original building. The original 3-story flat roof structure is symmetrical in design with simplified colonial revival style features. The building sits on the corner lot at Cedar Avenue and East 77th Street and the Cedar Branch YMCA retains its architectural integrity as a majority of the original building materials remain intact, and it remains unchanged in its setting, size, and scale. The Cedar Branch YMCA is significant under criterion A, its association with events that have made a significant contribution to the broad patterns of our history. The building retains its architectural integrity, as I just said, from the time when it was operating as the only YMCA in Cleveland to cater to African Americans. The footprint, form, and circulation patterns reflect the different uses the space had while it was used as a YMCA. This includes meeting rooms, smaller dormitory and office rooms, and the pool and gymnasium spaces. The Cedar Branch YMCA building remains a tangible reminder of the struggle which occurred in Cleveland for the use of recreational spaces by the non-white community. The building represents community pride and agency within the central neighborhood and it required direct financial contributions from the African American residents to complete the construction of the pool and gymnasium addition in 1948. The Cedar Branch YMCA also stands out as one of the remaining safe spaces for housing and overnight stays listed in the Green Book for Cleveland. Staff is supportive of its nomination to the National Register.
Excellent. And we'll open up the floor to the commission for questions and comments. Any questions and comments from commission? Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is, you know, it looks very sad and very dilapidated. Has there been any interest in the rehabilitation of this building, adaptive reuse for, you know, housing, or do we have any current status as far as that goes?
Through the chair, it's my understanding that the idea or the point behind getting this listed on the National Register is so that they can utilize the federal rehabilitation and potentially the state historic tax credits. So I don't know the exact plans, but I know there's a hope to do something with it. And this is kind of the first step, is having it designated so that it can open up those funding sources.
That would be excellent. The West Side YMCA at 32nd and Franklin was in similar condition, and that was renovated into condos using historic tax credits and others, other available subsidies. So that hopefully this would be helpful. Those are my comments.
All right, thank you, Ms. Anderson. Dr. Williams?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will just add that I think it's a wonderful idea to have this building included on the National Register of Historic Places. Certainly has a rich history, especially as we've been told, for African Americans here in the city of Cleveland in the 1940s and until the building was taken offline. I will say also that I know that especially on East 76th Street, there's a lot of, I think, a significant minority of the homes there were newly constructed. And this was on the watch of Councilwoman Phyllis Cleveland. And I met the young couple that owned this building a couple of years ago. I don't know if the Logans, I believe, are still the owners. And I attended a meeting where the status of this building was discussed. And so I'm glad that it's still standing. It needs a lot of work. They invested a lot of money for a young couple with a young family into boarding up the building. And they had worked with an architect as well. And part of the plan, and this is 2 years ago at least, part of the plan was to include residential units within the redeveloped building. So I'm glad that someone sees the potential for the building, and I hope they obtain the resources that they need to restore it to its original glory. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Other questions and comments from the commission? And overall, I support the nomination and echo everything that's been said by my fellow commission members. Not seeing any additional questions or comments. Would somebody like to make a motion?
I will make a motion
Mr. Bulick?
to accept the nomination to the National Register for this record.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. So we have a motion. We have a second. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. Mr. Musson, please follow.
All right, Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Dulick,
Yes.
Mr. Sambry,
Yes.
Mr. Tresick,
Yes.
Dr. Williams,
Yes.
Ms. Stratt,
Yes.
and I believe that is all. Yes. Yeah, I got Tresick.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Yes, Madam Chair, the motion passes unanimously.
Excellent. I will. Yes, that's what I understand. I'm sure. We'll move then on to our next nomination, the Erie Street Cemetery Historic District.
Hi.
Good morning.
Okay, Carl, so I press this button or this button? This one?
Yeah, it's totally counterintuitive.
It's
You can look at either. This one moves faster than that one right now, today. That one has a little bit of a lag.
Illumination?
Yep. There it is.
There we go. Okay, so thanks for having me. I've been working on this for about 2.5
Can you
years.
remind us your name?
Oh yeah, I'm Danny Cohen.
Thank you.
I've been working on the research on the site for about 2.5 years. And yeah, I'm glad it's at this point, and I'm excited for it to be nominated. So this is just a picture from like the 1960s. It just shows you like how large the green space is in comparison to the downtown. It is located on East 9th Street across from Progressive Field. This is just a historic map, and right here, Public Square, and right here was like the location of the first cemetery in Cleveland, known as Ontario Street Cemetery. And Erie Street Cemetery is the oldest cemetery in Cleveland now that has closed, and it's located about a mile from Public Square. A little background, this grounds were surveyed and selected by Leonard K. Singer in 1825. And the cemetery was established in 1826. Up until the 1850s, it was known as the city cemetery or the old city cemetery. And that reason really is just because it was the only cemetery in Cleveland. Until Woodland Cemetery was established in 1853. It's a pioneer cemetery laid out prior to the rural cemetery movement. So its design is really linear, flat, very simple compared to later cemetery movements that were more like Lakeview and Woodland that were more curvilinear and had more of a park-like environment. It, like I said, is the oldest now municipally owned cemetery. There are a couple like small cemeteries that are like prior to this, but they were not part of the original borders of Cleveland. They were like later annexed. And the cemetery is, yeah, it's approaching its bicentennial. Between 1797 and 1825, all of the burials that occurred in Cleveland, which was like the settlement and then village of Cleveland occurred at Ontario Street Cemetery in the location that I had pointed out. And in 1825, it's documented that burials were prohibited there. And then the grounds were selected for Erie Street, and then that was where people were buried after that. So about 300 bodies that it's approximate, 200 to 300 that were located at Ontario Street were moved with some of their, not all, but whatever gravestones they could move to the grounds of Erie Street Cemetery. It's a little less than 9 acres. It once was 10.25 acres. But the East 9th Street and East 14th Street borders had been moved in when those streets were widened. Prior to all of that occurring prior to the 1920s. Its architectural style is primarily Gothic revival with some Romanesque revival influences. A lot of the architecture is High Victorian, dating 1858 to 1889. And really the addition of these things were, again, like this was the Royal Cemetery movement. And so, like it was an attempt to romanticize the grounds, but what really didn't end up being successful. There are about 14,500 burials on the grounds. A lot of, again, early settlers, you know, the very first merchants, pioneers in Cleveland, 7 out of 12 first mayors of Cleveland, about 160 veterans, a large amount of Civil War veterans, from the Revolutionary to the Spanish-American Wars. There's 2 Native American chiefs buried on the grounds, an abolitionist, lots of really important people. The grounds were platted in 1840 into sections, and all the lots are sold by 1860. So like when I said plotted, really, as far as I know, the Center Drive, I'm guessing that like the Center Drive, as well as like all of the sections, the way it was plotted and designed really occurred sometime around 1840. I believe from 1820 to 1840 was likely just a large, sprawling, like rectangular burial ground. These are just some historic photos. So in the top left, that is kind of displays the design that once was there. This is just some of the significant architecture. The largest like rehabilitation to the grounds occurred in 1939 through a WPA project, and that's when the stone walls that are there today, as well as some other work occurred. And so this is like what the walls like look like. It was just metal fencing prior to that. That Gothic Revival Chapel once stood in the center of the cemetery, but it was demolished in the 1950s. And the footprint of it is sandstone, and it still sits like in the center of the cemetery. Unfortunately, it's no longer there. This is what the grounds look like today. Very different. A lot of that landscape design was removed in 1939 when the sandstone walls were built. And unfortunately, it caused the landscape like sod movement to occur because there were no longer like these like well draining, you know, drainage paths with gravel or whatever brick they were made out of, as well as a lot of the sandstone like curved in lots were removed. And I believe a lot of them still exist. I mean, a good amount probably still exists underneath the grass, but unfortunately, you know, you can still see some of them, but not all of them. So this is being nominated under criteria A and C. A for areas of settlement and Native American heritage, as well as C for architecture. And it's also under consideration for criterion D. Period of significance is 1826 to 1950. Selected for the establishment, as well as 1950 for the death of Chief Thunderwater. As far as the Native American heritage goes, really, the first Native American chief died and was buried in 1844, and in the late 19th century, Chief Thunderwater, who was a profound Native American chief who had influence on a national level and international level, really brought like Native American heritage to the site for about 70 years, 60 to 70 years. And that was in the form of a lot of Native Americans visiting the site, rituals, things like that. There's 15 contributing resources, 3 buildings, 4 structures, 7 objects, and the site itself. And the primary material on the site is sandstone. Here's some of the contributing architecture. There are 2 mausoleums, the cemetery office or gatehouse on the top right, which was rehabilitated in 2013. 2 vaults here and that are Romanesque revival in style, and then the famous entrance gateway. I found that Joseph Ireland designed the gateway and the gatehouse, and J.D. Copperfield, who was a stonemason in Cleveland, worked with him and did the stonemasonry for both. Copperfield worked with Ireland on a lot of projects, including the Monroe Street Cemetery, I believe, gatehouse and gateway. I can't remember. It's just the gatehouse gateway there. The architectural perimeter, it was put in 1939, and it consists of 8-foot tall sandstone walls. Really, I just want to note here, these rectangles on the walls were integrated into the design and represent what that map I showed you, where those avenues intersected the cemetery. When those were removed, these rectangles along here represent the locations of where those avenues once were. Here's some of the contributing objects that really primarily either they're only being considered contributing if they either architecturally or contribute or are like part of the areas of significance of settlement or Native American heritage. Here's another one. These are the some graves of some of the first 16 early settlers. That this really just represents the bodies that were moved from Ontario Street to Erie Street, because a lot of them are unmarked graves. And including like when they did the 1939 project in front of the gateway, because before that existed, the grounds extended further into East 9th Street. They found like 4 bodies, like when they went to go do that, likely when they went to go probably put the sidewalk in, or they were doing work on that East 9th Street wall, or border. And so like, yeah, I don't know if more bodies are just out of there or not. I feel like that should be considered, but they were moved, the bodies were moved inside the cemetery, and that's what that unknown early settlers marker represents. That was like a dedication to the reburial of those 4 bodies, along with probably other ones. Oh, this is just my last slide. Anyway, also a great place to watch fireworks. Yeah, that's it. Sorry, that was like a lot, but
No, that's excellent.
it's a lot of research.
Sure, no, it is. Thank you for the very detailed presentation. I will open up the floor then to the commission for questions and comments. I guess I will start us off. Oh, Dr. Williams, would you like to go first and then I will comment?
Sure. Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I would like to speak in support of the nomination of the Erie Street Cemetery to the National Register of Historic Places. I am especially pleased to see that there is an acknowledgement of its relationship to Native American history and this part of the world. And certainly I heard the mention of Chief Thunderwater's name. I know that there is a newer scholarly study based on his life, published at 2020, 2021. The papers are part of the collections at the Western Reserve Historical Society. So he's certainly very well known in the history of Pan-Indian movements in the United States and Canada. And this would be a great way to acknowledge his activism in Cleveland's history through the end of his life in the middle of the 20th century. So again, I would support this nomination.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am also in full support of this nomination. I'm a little surprised that it hasn't been nominated sooner. I was surprised it was just sitting out there. And I also wanted to say that I really appreciate all the hard work and investigation that you presented in this nomination. So yeah, I support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Other questions and comments from the commission? I guess I will echo what has already been said. I think I'm surprised this hasn't been nominated prior.
I know why, because it's very difficult.
Well,
it's going to be my greatest life achievement.
There you go. Well, thank you for all the research that you did and the persistence to get this nominated. I'm in full support of the nomination. Other questions and comments from the commission, or is someone hearing fairly consistent feedback? Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve, or we're not approving anything. We're supporting the nomination.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I will second.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Dulick. We have a second. Any further discussion? Not seen any. Mr. Musson, please follow.
All right, Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Dulick?
Yes.
Mr. Sambury?
Yes.
Mr. Trasick?
Yes.
Dr. Williams?
Yes.
And Ms. Trapp?
Yes.
I'm sure the motion passes unanimously. Yeah, just one note, I'll draft a letter and send that to Barb at the state office.
Okay.
So,
The nomination is being submitted to them on Sundays, so you'll have it to read shortly.
maybe I'll beat you.
I don't know, they might need a little more time to read through it. It's really long.
Yes.
Well, thank you and good luck.
Thank you.
So that concludes our nominations. We will then move on to meeting minutes. There was one that was circulated to all the commission members. Does anyone have any questions or comments, or would someone like to put forward a motion of approval?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from March 28th, 2024.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. So we have a second. Any further discussion? Not seeing or hearing any. Mr. Musson, please call roll.
All right, Ms. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Dulick?
Yes.
Mr. Sambury?
Yes.
Mr. Trasick?
Yes.
Dr. Williams?
Yes.
And Ms. Trapp?
Yes.
I'm sure the motion passes unanimously.
Excellent. And then administrative reports.
Not too much to report on. Jessica has not only facade magazines for each of you from the Cleveland Restoration Society, but also HR acknowledgement forms. I sent out some policy revisions that are coming from the administration, since you're all technically employees. They want everyone to fill one out and get that back. So if you want to fill that out, sign it here. I can turn those in for you. For those remote, I did email out last week, I think, but I can resend that email just so it's at the top of everyone's box. Those are due on the 29th, but you could have them by the end of the weekend.
Just makes the commission look that much better.
There you go. Excellent.
Wilson School.
Oh, yes, yeah, and then also yesterday, 2 days ago, we met with Ms. Chobe from representing Wilson School, still owned by the school district, to talk about potential reuses. You know, they're trying to figure out, do we want to move, push for demolition? Is there, can we still market the site? So we encourage them to take a good look at remarketing the site, put out another RFP, and just, it's right there on East 55th Street. If you guys, I'm sure everyone's driven by it plenty of times and just thought how sad. It's just sitting there with open windows as it has been for quite a few years now. So hopefully something happens with it. The Richmond Brothers building is sitting vacant across the street. It seems like a great spot to do a bunch of adaptive reuse. But
we are scheduling a site visit sometime in the next 2 weeks. It's going to be a hazardous thing, so wear appropriate attire.
So hard hats if you have them. You'll need to sign a waiver. So fun. Yeah. What we do for fun.
For Wilson School.
For Wilson School, yeah.
Okay, excellent.
That's all I have. Unless you guys.
No, chair report today.
One of these days you're gonna have.
Come on, it's been 9 years. Then we will adjourn today's meeting and look forward to seeing everybody at our next in 2 weeks. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. 2 weeks. All right. Thank